Hi, I'm Nancy Belcher. I am the CEO for Winona and a co-founder with Rob and some of our other friends. I have a PhD in biochemistry and studied thyroid hormones, metabolism, and weight gain. And then I went on and finished my postdoc in molecular biology and genetics and spent a lot of my career as a professor. So this is really fun for me to be able to talk to so many people with being remote. It's just very unusual for me. So this is fun.
So hi, my name's Mike Green. I'm a board certified OBGYN. I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley, and then I did a master's in chemistry. Fell in love and promised my future father-in-law that if we got married, that his daughter would get her bachelor's before I went on to medical school. So I did a master's degree in chemistry, chased her to where she was at Cal State Northridge, and then I did my went to drug her to St. Louis, and we did medical school there. I did a family practice training in Ventura County Medical Center in Ventura. I liked everything in medical school, and so I figured, well, I'll just be a buffet guy, do a little bit of everything, and do family medicine. And that's when I fell in love with OBGYN. I just love delivering babies. And I really like gynecology because you can really help people, either through surgery or like hormone replacement therapy or other medications, and you could really make a big impact. And I didn't necessarily feel the same way with medicine. Sometimes it's kind of depressing. So I did a whole second residency, dragged my family across country to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I did my residency in OBGYN. And we had fallen in love with Ventura, so we moved back to Ventura. And that's where I practiced for 17 years. So I've been doing this for about 22 years now. I finished my OB/GYN residency in 99. Our house got cut up in the Thomas Fire, and we ended up moving to Lake Arrowhead, which was really always a dream of ours. It's where we met, it's where we got married. I went to high school at Middle Rural High, Fighting Scott. And so we're up in Arrowhead now for about 2.5 years, and we love it here. I was really excited to be part of this. Ever since the Women's Health Initiative, I was in practice long enough to see the before and after. And man, when the Women's Health Initiative came out, everybody panicked. It was crazy. And everyone just stopped their medicine, and there was all this suffering, and it was complete overkill. And I knew right away this wasn't right. And as more data came out, I realized that this wasn't really, looked at correctly, and that hormone replacement therapy really is safe for women, and it makes a huge difference in women's lives. So this is something that has been a kind of a big thing for me for a long time, because I sort of saw the roller coaster, and I'm really glad to be able to provide, really life-changing, life-improving treatment for people. So this is sort of a dream come true. So as far as the timing, the sort of rule of thumb is within 10 years of complete menopause and before age 60. So you're perfect. You're like a great candidate for this. The reason back in the old days, and particularly with the Women's Health Initiative, we were sort of treating this like vitamins and putting like everybody on it like 80-year-olds, and it just doesn't make any sense. And so, yeah, if you put somebody on it that's already older and has heart disease and other problems, that can cause an issue. So 60 seemed to be the cutoff. If you give this to people before 60, it actually extends life expectancy. It needs to go somewhere where there aren't hair follicles. That's the important thing. And in general, we tell people not to put it on the breasts. That honestly probably doesn't matter, but because there's this whole boogaboo about the potential for breast cancer, just leave it away from the breast so we don't have to even think about it. The forearm is a convenient place. The thigh is fine as well. Problem with the hair follicles, there are enzymes in the follicles that metabolize, that break down hormone. And so if you put it in an area with hair follicles, number one, you're going to get less of the hormone actually make it through without getting broken down. And some of the things that the hair follicles can break the hormones down may not be other hormones that you want to have. So there's less side effect, and you get more drug into you if you put it in an area without hair. Whatever that area is dealer's choice. So the inside of the forearm is fine, the thighs, the inner thighs where there aren't hair is also fine. It's just, whichever place someone chooses to explain it. I think, and we just thought the forearm was an easier explanation.
The pharmacist shared with us was give it 30 minutes before and that's the maximum, right? Usually maybe 10, but if you really want to make sure it's fully absorbed, 30 minutes. There were some concerns about maybe it gets on your clothes and somehow stains your clothes. One thing that we were really careful about was we didn't want to get lotions that were scented or colored, because you could get sort of this dermatitis, like your skin would react to it. And also sometimes when I get a cream that has a fragrance, it might not be a fragrance that I particularly like. So it won't rub off on your clothes. But if you are concerned about that, 30 minutes is plenty.
DHEA is used in the bodybuilding community in really ridiculously high doses. And in that kind of cases, it's basically a way to get testosterone without getting testosterone. And the men will use DHEA with a medication called anastrozole, which blocks the estrogen part of it. And in that kind of situation, those giant doses, it can cause a lot of problems. It can cause in women, male style hair growth, really bad acne, and other problems as well. So the dose that I prescribe, usually the 25 or at most 50 milligrams, is like a tenth or even less than that, the dose that these people use it in the bodybuilding community. And so there's these side effects that you read about that are really these giant mega doses that we don't see in the small doses. The idea is to gently increase the testosterone levels really to sort of normal levels, what your testosterone level should have been or would have been when you were in your 20s or even 30s. We're not trying to get you to really high testosterone levels, like a bodybuilder. And so you're not going to see the scary testosterone side effects that you read about with this kind of dosage. So I don't think you have to worry about it making your facial hair worse or hair elsewhere on your body. DHEA in the 25 to 50 milligram dose range does not increase your risk of cancer. With a mega dose, all bets are off. In a normal conservative dosing range, like 25 milligrams to 50 milligrams a day, it's really very safe. And then the weight, that takes a while. My famous line that I answer online is that, it's like trying to reverse a moving train. First, you got to slow the train down, which means that even though it may be working, you may still be gaining weight, but you're gaining it at a slower pace than you were. And then eventually that gets stopped. Now you're neutral for a while, and then we can start reversing it and getting weight loss. And that's a process that takes time. This is not a miracle weight loss drug. You're not going to lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not realistic. We're looking for slow, steady progress. And that's not as sexy as, these, lose 20 pounds in a month or your money back kind of things. But honestly, those things don't work, and they certainly don't work long term. Mm-hmm. What we're looking for is slow, steady progress that adds up over time, and then you get your goal. This is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to give back the testosterone that has dropped. And a lot of women just think of testosterone as a male hormone, and it's not. We women make less testosterone than men, but we need it for many things, including lean muscle mass. Without the testosterone, we lose our lean muscle mass. And so the level of testosterone that you have at 25, by the time you're 50, it's half of what it was when you were 25. So what's being prescribed is just trying to get you back to where you were. It's not anything beyond what your body would have normally made. When your testosterone levels drop, then you have less lean muscle. And what that does is it means your metabolic rate, your metabolism drops. And your muscles move all the time. Even when you're sound asleep, they move. So you're burning calories even when you sleep. And so if you drop that lean muscle, then you're dropping your metabolic rate. So if we can get that lean muscle back with exercise and increased testosterone, then you can start to increase your metabolism. So yes, we're eating right, we're doing our exercise, but sometimes we need another little nudge.
Yeah, people talk about calories in, calories out, that, it's just math, and that's true, except the calories out equation really varies for people. So, and that's where the metabolic rate comes in. So it takes more energy just to keep muscle there than it does to keep fat there. So the more muscle you have, the more you can eat, and the more calories you can take in, because those calories are getting burned off by muscle, which wouldn't have otherwise get burned off by fat. So it's sort of a cycle. You start gaining lean muscle mass, you gain more muscle, you lose some fat. Even if that doesn't change the scale, it increases your metabolic rate. And so then at the same amount of calories, because your basal calorie expenditure, amount of calories that you burn just sitting around doing nothing, goes up, in the same amount of calorie intake, you actually start losing weight that way. And so it is calories in, calories out, but it's a calories out part that's a little tricky, because that can change based on your body makeup. I like to wait at least 10 weeks, maybe 3 months before we do a dose change, because sometimes it takes that long to really see the full benefit. My personal feeling about any medication is that you really want to be on the lowest dose that works. Anything after that, you're just getting extra medicine for no particular reason. I sort of try and start people on the lowest dose I think is going to work. And I'm actually been pretty good at that. So it usually works. And occasionally, it's probably a little too low of a dose for someone and we have to increase the dosage. But I like to try to wait at least 10 weeks before we do that, because you haven't gotten really the maximum benefit. Now, if somebody's really miserable and they want to raise the dose, I'm happy to do that.
And with the compound medications and the patches, Dr. Green can adjust as needed. And so I think what I hear you're saying, you will adjust accordingly, but you want to give it that first couple of months and then we'll review.
A period at the beginning like that happens. Your body hasn't been experiencing hormone. All of a sudden, you're sort of reactivating your body, and it can trigger a period. My feeling is, if you haven't had a period in a long time, and now all of a sudden this is causing bleeding in that first month, doesn't bother me. But if it keeps causing bleeding after that, that probably needs to be evaluated at minimum with an ultrasound, just to make sure that it's not just the hormone, that we haven't uncovered something, that's going on in there, a polyp or something like that. So, the first initial month, you get a period or some abnormal bleeding, that's not really worrisome. But if it continues, that's something that you're going to need to see an in-person doctor for and have evaluated. And it probably still is nothing, but still it needs to be looked at to make sure. So I wouldn't expect that to happen after the first month. Of course, anything's possible and it can, but if it continues beyond that, it may be from the medicine, or it may be that the medicine has uncovered a problem that was there and we just didn't know about it, and it's worth, I think, looking at it. As long as you're on it before 60, you can continue past 60. And it's really, honestly, it's a statistical thing. And they look at each age statistically. And so as long as you start it before 60, you still are going to get the safe benefit from it. And you can continue that as long as you need, even through your 60s, as long as necessary, really.
And that's not just us saying that. That's the American Medical Association. That's the North American Menopause Society. There's a comparable society in Britain that says the exact same thing. So it's sort of the party line. Before 60, you're fine.
My wife started on our cream and the DHEA. She was pretty disappointed, honestly, at first, because she gained some weight and had some side effects, but she stuck with it. And about 3 months, she came to me and it's like, my skin seems so much better. And then a couple of weeks later, she's like, I'm starting to lose weight. And so she's been really happy. But it was a rocky start. We're not trying to act like we've got some miracle pill where you take this and the weight will just fall off. And it doesn't work that way. You still have to keep your healthy habits. And it takes a while to really change the way your hormonal, your metabolism from your hormones work, to change the way you metabolize, change where you put fat, how you accumulate muscle. And that's a process. But it can be a little rough at first.
The thing that really drove me to my physician and looking for answers, it really wasn't the hot flashes. It wasn't the change in mood. It was really the weight gain. For me, it was a bit of vanity because I always took a lot of pride in being a really fit person. But not only did I gain weight really, really steadily, over a pound a week often, but the way I gained the weight was so troublesome. So I used to gain weight sort of in my thighs and I had a small torso. And then all of a sudden I looked truly pregnant and I was in my 40s and wasn't pregnant. The first physician that I went to, because I was sort of in denial about menopause, was willing to prescribe me some medication that is a weight loss medication that can cause long-term heart disease. Can really damage your heart. And I was willing to take that. The other doctor prescribed me anti-epilepsy medication for my hot flashes, but still I wasn't willing to admit I was on menopause. So once I started taking HRT, after I really investigated the Women's Health Initiative and realized how poorly that research was done, the first step for me was normalizing the weight gain, right? Just stopping it. And so I Finally got back on the scale because it was so demoralizing even to step on the scale. Got back on the scale and I saw myself sort of plateau and then just very steadily coming down. And so, like Dr. Green said, it's going to be a process. You're going to go up, you're going to stabilize, and then you're going to come down. Because the body is not going to normalize those hormones immediately. So I was really afraid to take HRT. My mom is a breast cancer survivor. I'm a research scientist, and I spent many years as an oncology cancer researcher. I believed the Women's Health Initiative because, oddly enough, not only was my mom a participant, she was one of the 161,000 women that were in the Women's Health Initiative study, but I also was a research scientist at the institution that released that data. So I really had a vested interest in believing the data. So they scared me. They had some really scary results about breast cancer and blood clots and strokes. That was the big part of my hesitation when I started to get the hot flashes and the weight gain. And as I said earlier, I really started to do my research and talk to people. And what I realized was that the study that came out in 2004 not only has been dismissed by many scientists, but has actually been rolled back by the very scientists that presented the data. They admitted that they prematurely released the data. And I just want to give one specific story about the Women's Health Initiative. In the groups of women that they put together, normally you call it a cohort. There's 161,000, so there are many different cohorts. But one of the cohorts that they had was on hormone replacement therapy. And in that cohort, they had women that were 40 and they had women that were 80 in the same group. They already had heart disease. They were hormone deficient for over 30 years. They were put on hormone replacement therapy, had a stroke, had something happen to them, and then it was attributed to hormone replacement therapy when in actuality they were 79 years old and hormone deficient for way too long. The risks of these medications are risks that we took into account with your onboarding. And so when you gave us your medical history, there were certain things that were red flags for us. One was if you personally, you yourself, not your mom, but you yourself had cancer, certain kinds of cancer like breast cancer. What were the other risks, Mike?
Stroke, TIA, heart attack, or significant heart disease. Honestly, there are some women with some of these risk factors that with a really careful analysis and a long conversation, it might be worth the risk for them to take it. Because of the platform we're on, I want to be extra careful. And so there have been patients where I've said, sort of borderline, I don't think this is the right platform for you. You really want to be able to sit down with somebody, you talk face to face, they can do lab work, they can look at all your old records. And that's not really something we can do here. So we sort of cherry pick. So if you've been prescribed this, it's really safe for you because those are the patients, we're trying to be extra careful. The last thing I want to do is hurt anybody. The screening questions are designed to be really, pretty tight. And even the borderline, cases, I don't think this is the right way to do it. As far as the risks, they're actually pretty small. And especially, pre-screen patients. So as I said before, women that are appropriate candidates to start hormone replacement therapy before 60 live longer than women that don't have hormone replacement therapy. So in the whole balance of things, you're more likely to live longer than if you never took it at all. So even though there's little teeny risks, the overall big picture is you actually lower your risk of dying with hormone replacement therapy. And on top of that, you feel better along the way. The breast cancer risk is the one I think people are usually most afraid of. And really, it's sort of questionable. There's some data that it might increase breast cancer, but there's some other data that's been coming out recently that says it actually, in appropriate patients starting early, actually decrease the risk of breast cancer. The right answer on the test right now is that it would slightly increase your risk of breast cancer, but it also decreases your risk of other cancers like colon cancer and uterine cancer if you're taking it appropriately. If taken before 60, decreases your risk of heart attack. So overall, in the balance of things, the big scary risks, you're more likely to be healthy on it than off of it. Side effects is a different thing, and most of the side effects are sort of only at the beginning when people start the medication as the body's adjusting to it. Sometimes there'll be a little bit of acne, which should clear up. Sometimes it'll trigger a period for people, but that shouldn't be ongoing. kind of the first month or so, maybe some spotting or an abnormal period.
Mm-hmm.
But that should be sort of a one-time thing. Some bloating at the beginning and water weight, we sort of talked about it already, but that should come off pretty quickly. And occasionally, haven't had too much problems with this, but people have a little bit of nausea as their body gets used to the medicine, particularly with the pills, much more so than the cream or the patches.
The 60 number just simply comes from the research done. It's sort of like what we're hearing about with the vaccines, whether you want a vaccine or not. We're all sort of watching how the FDA is being very, very rigorous about what they're suggesting people do. And the same goes for hormone therapy, that there is a very rigorous protocol before the FDA approves anything. And they don't have enough data for 60 and older that haven't ever taken HRT. So they simply drew that line in the sand and said, we don't have enough data in order to say that this is safe. Now, it very well could be perfectly safe for women over 60 that have never taken it. And let me just qualify that by saying that if you have taken HRT before 60, you can continue to take it. And I personally plan on continuing to take it when I hit 60. It's just for those women that have never taken it. And again, it's just because the FDA is so rigorous. And I think that that's a good thing, right? We just don't know enough. One thing that I'm sure all of us have heard a lot about, and it's a little bit old school, the apple versus the pear sort of analogy, and that weight gain in our stomachs that is synonymous with menopause. That's the weight gain that is the dangerous weight gain. So curves are great, and I love the fact that younger women are embracing kind of a bigger rear and showing it, not hiding it under smocks anymore. But when we talk about this weight gain around the middle, that's the heart disease, that's the type 2 diabetes, that's the certain forms of cancer, including colon cancer. So that's the kind of weight gain that, while curves are wonderful, those curves are actually pretty dangerous to our health.
Two big ways of getting the hormone into your body. One is to eat it, put it in your mouth, and then it gets absorbed to the digestive system. That goes directly to the liver and then out to the rest of your body. The other way is to put it on your skin and have it absorbed to the skin, where it gets absorbed into your blood system and gets distributed that way. It still ends up eventually getting metabolized by the liver, but it doesn't get metabolized by the liver as quickly as when you take it orally. So that's called first pass metabolism. So we can avoid that by putting it through the skin. Both the patch and the cream give that advantage. So it means that we can use less hormone, and that hormone is used more efficiently than when we take it orally. There is a little advantage to the transdermal through the skin approach. It decreases issues with the liver, and for those that have cholesterol and lipid problems, it's actually easier on that as well. As far as the patch and the cream, they're both ways of getting it through your skin. There's a couple of differences. One is the patch is more expensive, but the other difference is that the patch is, you only have to deal with it twice a week, which is kind of nice. On the other hand, you have to wear a patch all the time. And so some people, the patch that they don't mind is sort of in the background, works well for them, and that's great. Other people, they kind of don't like having a patch all the time. Sometimes the adhesive doesn't work so well and it falls off, and it can be a little obnoxious for some people. And so the cream for those people is better because they just put a little bit on at night, they go to sleep, and they forget about it. So, that is really kind of a personal thing and how you feel. Some people get a little sensitivity to the adhesive, the glue that sticks the patch on your body. It can go from obnoxious to being really bad for different people. And that can sometimes be right away, or it can develop weeks or even months later. And so that's another thing about the patch, problematic for some people. The other thing is with the cream, where our pharmacy is compounding that. And so we can add progesterone to it. We can change the ratios. If you still have a uterus and you're needing estrogen and progesterone, we can put it all in a cream. The patch just has estrogen. So if you need progesterone, then you're going to be using the patch as well as an oral progesterone pill.
And I think the thing I would want to add is, when I first started, I started by taking the pill. And then I thought, I'm going to give this transdermal a chance because I liked the idea of taking less of the medication. And so I started with the patch. I liked the patch. And then I moved over to the creams. This is going to sound really strange, but my age spots on my arms are going down with the cream. That's some sort of weird side benefit, I guess. But I moved from the oral to the transdermal because I wanted to try and not have that first pass that Mike was talking about. And that first pass happens with any kind of medication. If it's ibuprofen or any medication that your doctor gives you, you'll look on the prescription and sometimes it'll say, take it every 4 hours. And that's because your liver does a great job of clearing those meds out of your body. I mean, your liver's job is sort of the garbage dump for all these things. And so its job is to filter out these things, even these good things like these medications. So that's why you have to take like ibuprofen every 4 hours if you have an injury. The same is true for HRT. You're going to have to take more of the HRT because the liver is going to try and filter that out. That's just what it does. So transdermal, you can take less of the medication. It does eventually go to the liver, but not like the oral. One of the things that people don't realize about the Women's Health Initiative is that the hormones that they used in that study, and again, this is an old study, this is a decades old study that's still scaring people. They used hormones that were derived from pregnant horse urine. And so they collected urine from horses that were pregnant, and then they extracted the hormones. Horses have 21 different kinds of estrogen. Human women have 3. So when you were getting those hormones in the Women's Health Initiative and otherwise, you were getting 18 hormones that your body didn't know what to do with. So when we saw that we could extract hormones from yams and also soy products, but soy products have been shown to have some detrimental effects, we realized that we could have bioidentical hormones, which are hormones that our body identifies as the same as what we create ourselves, not 18 extra hormones. So we chose the yams instead of soy because of the research. Mike, do you have anything else to add to that one?
The brand name for that hormone is Premarin, which, back in the day, that's what we all used. I never really thought about it until one day it hit me. Pregnant mare urine, Premarin. That's where the name comes from. It's not like they're trying to hide it. And I just thought that was hilarious when I learned that. There's really no negative interaction between the IUD and the cream. They work really fine together. And so if you're happy with your IUD and you want to leave it in, that's totally safe to do. So it's safe to stop the medicine at any time. Stopping the medicine may trigger an initial period. So if you decide, this isn't for me, and you stop the medicine, don't be surprised if a week, 10 days, 2 weeks later, you get a period. That would be sort of expected. But apart from that, it won't cause any problems. So this is not one of those medicines that needs to be gradually weaned or it's going to cause some kind of health issue. Again, DHEA gets broken down in your body into estrogen and testosterone. And as we talked about, we're not trying to turn you into Arnold Schwarzenegger, but this is basically giving you back the testosterone that your body used to make while your ovaries were, at the top of their game, and now they're not really producing it anymore. The testosterone helps with lean muscle mass and metabolism, and so it really will help you gain weight. There have been several studies actually looking at menopausal women and adding DHEA, and statistically, they do lose more weight than women that are not on DHEA. So there are studies that do show that it does work that way, beyond just the theoretical that we're talking about.
For me, my energy level went up. And, honestly, when your energy level goes up, so does your mood. Your mood improves. And so for me, it was just sort of this whole, I hate to say, stratospheric change. It was just awesome.
The way I look at this, I've sort of the 2-week check-in, the 10-week follow-up, that kind of thing. The difference in the office is that medicine has changed, and we're pushed to see patient, and we just don't have the time to spend with people. So with this, it's nice. People have a question, they message in through the portal. I have time to think about it, answer back and forth. And even if I'm in the middle of something, I can kind of do stuff in between, and I can spend as much time as I need to make sure that people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. the risks and the benefits, and really help people. So this has been a real pleasure, a real blessing for me, and I love hearing that we're helping people, because that's really the best part of medicine, quite honestly. Making a difference in people's lives. So it's my pleasure. So my personal feeling about hormone levels is they're really inaccurate. And the problem is that they move up and down throughout the day, and throughout and from day to day. For whatever reason or not, is this a good day or a bad day for you? And so I have never found hormone levels to be particularly helpful in dosing. And honestly, there was actually just recently an article in the New England Journal of Medicine saying the same thing, that for HRT, the blood tests are a waste of time and money for patients, and that we really should be dosing this based on symptoms. And that's what I think. I mean, I don't really care what the lab says. I care how you feel. And so the question is, did this work? Are you feeling better? Are your symptoms adequately controlled? If they are, we got the right dose. If they're not, then we may need to increase the dose. Are you having side effects from the medication? Maybe we need to decrease the dose. So that's the way I think dosing should be done, is based on how you feel. Is the medicine working? Is it not working? Is it causing problems? And from that, we can figure out what the ideal dose is for you. And then even the maintenance dose may change over time. And so you may be good for 6 months or a year. And then maybe you need a little more, maybe you don't need as much. And your body is the one that's going to tell us that. I think the body is more sensitive than any lab. And if you listen to it, and I listen to you, I think together we can figure out the right dose. If supplements are helping some, stay on it for a little while. And then once this has gotten up to sort of full working, you might be able to stop the supplements, save your body some extra medicine, and save your pocketbook on the supplements as well. It's safe to take them together, but probably eventually not necessary.
Yeah, and I always hesitate with a lot of the supplements like black cohosh and things like that, because as we probably all know, they're not tested. We don't know necessarily where they come from. All of our medications are FDA approved medications, and then our own pharmacy that's licensed. And some of those supplements, they're just not approved or tested. So I really don't know where they come from.
The answer is no. We do have a progesterone cream that we know has good absorption. Progesterone's a little tricky in the absorption transdermally. The progesterone in the capsules may not absorb if put on the skin, and you may not get the protection that you need with the progesterone if you do it that way. So if you really want to use a transdermal skin progesterone, we do have a progesterone cream, but I wouldn't recommend doing that with the oral progesterone, because it's really unlikely you're going to get the dose that you need that way. Some women do find it helpful for their symptoms. If you have a uterus, you absolutely need progesterone with estrogen. So estrogen by itself with the uterus greatly increases your risk of uterine cancer. But when you add progesterone to it, it actually greatly reduces the risk of uterine cancer. So you need it for sure if you have a uterus. If you don't have a uterus, you don't need that protection. But for some women, they find that adding progesterone can help some of their symptoms.